Space Arena.
Ground Arena.
SAGA Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Space Arena Ground Arena, where we cover Star Wars Unlimited from the ground up into space. I'm BananaCrapshoot. With me tonight is Dan. Mr. Ben is not able to join us due to some family stuff, so we're going to do a short and sweet little mini episode for everybody to just get something out there. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm playing more Star Wars than ever.
Yeah, how have the webcam games been going?
They've been going pretty good. I've been rocking Vader Blue a lot, and he's gone pretty well. I lost my last one against a really good opponent, Breaker, in a very tragic just puking of my deck on itself. But it was a fun game still, which is good. And a lot of locals recently, too. So I'm not going to be able to make locals the next 2 weeks, so I'm itching right now. But after that, I'll be back.
Do you have, I know store showdowns are starting to show up. Do you have a store showdown?
They haven't scheduled any here yet. We've got on May 4th, there's a case tournament, but I'm going to be in Minneapolis, so I won't go to that. And they had a store credit tournament last weekend that my buddy won with True Red, so that was cool. One of my coworkers and I'll play at lunch, and he took it home after several weeks of losing and getting frustrated that he thought he was bad at the game. He finally won the whole tournament. It was like a $20 buy-in for store credit, and he got a ton of store credit from it, so that'll be cool.
That's cool.
He'll be excited for set 2.
I played, since last time we talked, I tried a Palpatine yellow mess into, and I played Kevin from Roll On, and he smacked me with Vader green. Yeah, just smacked me with it. So then, bunch of the local guys I played with that I played Destiny with, they're pretty high on Krennic, so I was like, fine. Let me see this thing. I'll try Krennic. I made some tweaks to it. I think I adjusted the main board to be a little bit better into Boba and aggro, I think. And then I played a good opponent playing Boba, and I beat him with Krennic, so now I've been playing a lot of Krennic. It's probably what I'm leaning to take to store showdowns at this point. So.
I like that we're a month past release and we're still exploring different leaders and finding different avenues that we like. That's pretty cool to me. I think that's neat.
Yeah, that is. And you saw the top 16 from the PPG event in Orlando. There was 8 different leaders in the top 16. So
that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. But tonight what we have, we're going to go over card previews from set 2 that we have seen. And then we're going to talk about some of the 3 mechanics, not some of them, but all 3 mechanics that are new in set 2. So I will get you had anything else to hit on what you've been playing recently while I load this up?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk while you're loading the PowerPoint. I've been playing a lot of different decks recently. What I've been playing the most in the last week is Cassian Double Red. After that Florida 1K, and after I've been smacking people around with Vader Blue with events at my local meta for a while, our entire meta has turned into these awful control decks that are just full of events. And they really hate wide boards with Benthic and Cantina Braggart, and they hate Saw Gerrera, and Cassian just thrives off it. So it's been pretty great. He's been sneaking in a lot of wins against these people that are playing more recent winner decks and these really event-heavy Iden and Vader decks, and it's been pretty fun. I like seeing a leader that hasn't overperformed sneak in some wins locally.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I saw your PowerPoint for a second.
Yeah, I had it. All right.
There it is.
First up, we have Crosshair. Is a 4-cost command villainy unit, ground unit, 2 power, 6 health. Imperial Clone Trooper has 2 actions for its text box. So the first action costs 2 resources, and this unit gets +1 for this phase. You don't have to exhaust, so you can do this as many times as you want, as long as you have the resources to pay for it. And then the second action, the cost is to exhaust the card, and then this unit deals damage equal to his power to an enemy ground unit. So what are your initial thoughts on Crosshair.
Oh, I love it. I think he's got good stats. A big six butt is what that character needs. And the action is pretty cool. I like that it's repeatable. It's like a money dump for green decks, especially green villain decks that like to ramp. And I could see this being used two ways. One way as removal and one way as a finisher, right? He has the trooper tag, so if you run this with precision fire, you're going to be able to sneak in a really big attack to end the game and get past sentinels. And I think that's cool that they found a way to make removal on a body also a closer all in the same unit. So I'm excited. It seems pretty cool.
I think it's pretty cool. I think it since it's like an Imperial Trooper, you could see it in like a Tarkin deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
With lots of buffing with between General Taggy and, if that's how you pronounce it, I never know how to pronounce his name, and Tarkin, getting even more buffs. So I think he's pretty cool. And if you were looking at like a Grand Inquisitor green deck, he has less than 3 power, so you could get some extra swings in with him. And then next up we have Cartel Turncoat, which is a space unit. It is Cunning Heroism, 2 power, 3 health, underworld vehicle fighter traits, and this has a bounty, draw a card. So bounty is when this unit is defeated or captured, your opponent collects the bounty. So this is a card that you play that has a bounty on it, and your opponent, when they defeat it, can draw a card. What do you think about this one?
I like the stat line at 1 cost. It'd be broken at 1 cost without a bounty, right? But I'm not a big fan of giving my opponent cards. I think this is fine in a deck like Cassian, like we just talked about, right? He'd rather have it have 3 attacks so it can trigger his ability, because you're giving yourself cards by playing that unit, so it kind of evens itself out. It's going to be really great in aggro decks that don't care how many cards your opponent has in hand, but a lot of times that's going to fuel Child's In, that's going to fuel removal, finding the right answers to slow down your aggro. So I'm not as crazy about it as I thought it was going to be. If we get a lot of synergy with the Underworld tag, could be a lot better. But right now, it's kind of a less exciting card for me, but a great card for draft.
Yeah, I think limited, this card will probably see a lot of play. Constructed, I think we have to wait and see. I mean, a 2-3 for 1 is, we're seeing some push off of what we would have seen in set 1. But the card draw is enough of a downside probably that's why it can be a little pushed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in like a cunning aggro deck, running like Leia, a turn 1, Leia, ready resource and play this. So you have...
Pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go wide, I don't think you care. As long as you can go wide, you don't really, like you said, you don't care if your opponent draws a card. So maybe you could see play, but I think we have to obviously see more cards.
Being space is significant too, right? They've got to respond to that with an A-Wing or something like that. TIE Fighter's not going to kill it, so it can definitely be a little more agile in space with that bounty.
Yeah. All right, we will... You want to read off these two?
Yeah, so we've got Vigilant Pursuit Craft. And Vigilant Pursuit Craft is obviously a Vigilance card at 5 cost with 1 Vigilance icon, 3 power, 5 hit points, and the Sentinel keyword. So when you play this in space, they won't be able to hit your base or other units. And has the Smuggle keyword, which is one of the new mechanics we're going to discuss. So the Smuggle cost is 7 with a Vigilance icon. So if you have a Vigilance icon, you could pay 7. I assume if you don't have the Vigilance icon, you'd pay 9 then. You'd pay the tax.
That's
and
correct.
If this card is a resource, you may play it for its Smuggle cost and replace it with the top card of your deck. So that's pretty cool for Vigilance, a card that can sneak in late and be a Sentinel. So what do you think of Vigilant Pursuit Craft?
I like that. It's a 3/5 with Sentinel. The Smuggle I don't really care too much about, to be honest with you, on this card. 5 for a 3/5 seems not the most powerful of cards, right? When we have a 3/4 Sentinel for 4, we're just getting 1 extra health for that 1 extra resource. So I'm not too crazy about this. I think this will be mainly like a draft and limited format card.
Yeah, I could see this card being fine in a Smuggle deck, but you're paying 2 extra resources to play it from hand. So you're basically playing, or to play it from the resource room. So you're paying 2 extra resources to not lose a card. That could be worth it. If we get cards that accelerate how cheap it is to smuggle things or something like that, that could be really cool. In general, Smuggle costs that are this high excite me less because I'm hopefully going to draw into whatever I wanted to play on my 7 resource turn by turn 6 or whatever that ends up being. So I don't anticipate that what I'll want to play on turn 7 is a 3/5 Sentinel. But at the
Right.
end of the game, when we get to fatigue like we do in control matches, or when we get to like really needing to preserve a control event in our hand and wait for our opponent to play something, this could be a good answer, especially if you need 2 units and 1 to protect you from Avenger or something like that. But a cost of 7 for a 3/5 is real high, even if it doesn't cost you a card.
Well, even a 5, right? Like the neutral Carillion fighter that's a 5/5 Sentinel for 5. And then the System Patrol Craft is a 3/4 Sentinel for 4. Like I'm just not crazy about this one.
Yeah, I feel like you're paying for the smuggle cost on the non-smuggle card side of the card.
Yeah.
I think it's a 4/4, the Carillion Freighter, but it's still like you're putting it in an aspect now.
Yeah.
I doubt the transport tag is going to do much for it.
Oh yeah.
Big thumbs down, I think.
Is that a 4/4 for 5? Was I
It's a
off?
4/4 for 5, but it's still like
I'd still
stats
rather
are the
play that.
same, right?
Yeah. I think I'd still rather play that.
I don't mind it because of smuggle cost, but I'm not jonesing to put this in a deck. All right, our next card is a Vigilance event with 1 cost. Unexpected Escape. Exhaust a unit, you may rescue a captured card guarded by that unit. What do you think? Let's talk about capture and rescue, I guess.
Right. So we talked about capture a little bit last time with like the Mandalorian and stuff. So when you capture a card, it goes face down under the card that captured it. That card's considered guarding that card. So this is a way to rescue that unit, and it has some soft removal because you get to exhaust them for, a phase. So for 1, that seems pretty cheap to get your dude back and exhaust a unit. So I think this will see play if capturing is popular, which as one of the 3 new mechanics in set 2, I can only guess that capturing will be fairly relevant. So
yeah, I agree. I think this is a huge card for Vigilance. Vigilance doesn't have access to exhaustion. And a lot of times, right, with Vigilance, you'll want to play a Vanquish or you want to play a Takedown, but you need to wait 1 more turn to make it useful. This lets you stall for that 1 turn. A lot of times I play a 2-cost Leia just to exhaust a unit and stall it for a turn. And she comes with the body, which is great, but being 1 resource cheaper and in a different aspect, this is just another tool for the control toolbox. And I think that's super strong. It becomes relevant if captured becomes in your area, but even 1 cost to just exhaust a unit is basically worth it without a villain or hero tag. I mean, it's pretty good, I would say. So I'm happy.
yeah, I agree with all that.
Well, I don't think we have exhaustion. We have Asteroid Sanctuary in
Yellow.
Cunning. We have Gunning in Cunning, and we have Leia in Cunning. We have Jet Spider Spray in Cunning. So there's a ton of exhaustion there. So it's adding like someone else's removal shtick to another color. That seems relevant. All right, what's the next slide?
All right, so next up we have Privateer Crew, which is a 2-cost command ground unit. It is a 2 power, 2 health underworld unit. It has a smuggle cost of 6 resources with the command aspect. And the ability says, when played using smuggle, give 3 experience tokens to this unit. So if you play it by itself, it's a 2/2 for 2. And if you smuggle it for 6, it becomes a 5/5.
Wow. I like it better than the other one. That's not saying much. I'm not a big fan of 2/2s for 2 cost. Even Guardian of the Wills, I struggle with sometimes in Vigilance because a lot of times it just gets blown out before it gets to do anything. But that being said, having more turn 1 plays that can also be turn 4 or 5 plays is pretty strong. I'm not a big fan of the smuggle costs being so high because, again, I think by the time I am at 6 resources, with drawing 2 cards a turn and all the filtering and other things I can do in my deck, hopefully I've drawn the card I wanted to play. And it's typically not a 2/2 body that can just get bamboozled. So I don't see this as super strong. I mean, a great draft card, and there might be some cool mechanic that makes it worth it with Smuggle, but Smuggle costs of 6+ have me very hesitant right now until we see the full card pool.
Yeah, so far, the smuggle costs they all seem really high for what they're doing, and I wonder, like, what the balancing on that was like, you know?
I feel
Like,
like it's to replace the card draw that you don't lose out on, and I don't know if these two have sort of figured that out. I do
so
like that you get the experience on this guy. That's good. But
yeah, and I want to get to it when we talk about mechanics individually in a little bit. So I
yeah.
won't go too much into my
Okay,
thoughts
okay,
on
okay.
Smuggle, but I am also not a huge fan of this card. And then after that, we have an event, Timely Intervention. It's a 1-cost command tactic event. It says play a unit from your hand, give it ambush for this phase, and it has a smuggle cost of 2 resources with the command S. So you get to play a unit. You have to pay the cost of the unit, obviously, and then you can give it ambush, and you can smuggle.
Yeah.
And it was clarified that you can exhaust the card you're smuggling to smuggle it. That makes sense.
Oh, and it comes into play ready still. Nice. With ambush. It readies. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. This is a really strong card. I don't know if I'm a fan of it, because I think ECL is already super prevalent in the meta. Like, ambush is a strong mechanic that people are still figuring out the puzzle of how to get around. And I really don't think ECL decks need the chance to not have to play ECL. They don't need that extra 5 hit points. They have lost it for a reason. I can't say I'm super excited about this card. I think it's pretty fair out of hand to pay 1 extra and an extra card to give a unit ambush. But to pay 2 extra to give anything ambush, yeah, you're probably going to have to trade up curve or trade with their last round drop. But it's really strong with things that have wet attack abilities. It's a really cool card, but I think it's a immensely powerful card, and maybe one that, like, the most popular color aspect didn't need right away. But time will tell.
Yeah, I think this card's definitely going to see a lot of play.
Yeah.
Like you said, the ability to give things that don't have ambush, we have seen is very strong. So, and we're just getting more toys to play with in that regard. So being able, I like the smuggle on this, I think, better than the other smuggle cards we've seen so far, because it is much cheaper, right? The smuggle cost is 1 more than the normal cost.
And it seems like a great toolbox card that you'd want later, right?
Yep.
So it's one that you'd want to play later at a cheaper cost. So it seems like it's actually going to get triggered as a smuggle condition a lot more frequently, which is good.
Yeah. So I like
All
that.
right. I'll read the next slide. We've got the Hotshot DL44 Blaster with some nondescript smuggler here. Attached to a non-vehicle unit, it is an aggression card with 1 cost. It gives the unit +2 attack, +0 hit points, item, weapon traded. The smuggle cost, interestingly, is 3 cost with the cunning aspect. When played using smuggle, attack with the attached unit, so it becomes a snapshot reflexes when played if you smuggle it. What are your thoughts on this Hotshot?
I think by itself, paying 1 for +2 is okay. I don't know that you'd ever really want to smuggle this for 3.
Mm-hmm.
For 3 to get a +2 and the attack, I mean, maybe. I mean, surprise strikes at 2 for 3. So I don't know that I'd want to play 3 for +2, you know? The math seems off on that, but I think another draft sealed card. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could be completely wrong.
I like the 3 for +2 because you don't lose the card advantage you lose from Surprise Strike. I also like that, right? I mean, if we were to play a Fleet Lieutenant that comes with a body and gives an attack for +2, but this is a permanent +2, so it's a little bit different. I mean, permanent until your dude's dead. But I'm not...
By Bamboozle.
Yeah, or Bamboozled. I don't know what I think about cards that have a different smuggle aspect than their main aspect. I've been trying to puzzle this out since seeing this card. When it was presented, they said, this is really cool, because you could run this in a yellow deck without aggression, and then you could play it from your smuggle row. But that means you're putting a card in your deck that will only ever be useful as a resource. Or you could pay 3 to not smuggle it, but it's the same cost from your resource row. So, like, why? So I don't see the attraction of having the offset aspects. Maybe there's a thematic reason for it. But if this was 3 with red, it's not like it would make red decks or aggression decks super powerful. So, like, why hurt a mono red player or an aggression player by putting the cunning aspect on this card. It makes me a little sad. So maybe there'll be a cool reason for that. Maybe it's to encourage more aggression cunning pairings. But the excuse that was given of maybe this can get played in a card that doesn't have aggression, this does not make me want to do that. So if that was the goal, this did not work. All right, the next card is an event, a heroism event, 2 cost. This is the way with the Mandalorian tag. Search the top 8 cards of your deck for up to 2 Mandalorian or upgrade cards. Reveal them and draw them. What do you think?
I like this one.
I'm glad you do. I'm just kidding.
You don't. So as far as like search effects we've seen, being able to search the top 8 is a pretty good amount, and you get to pull 2 cards from it. Like the Tarkin unit, he searches 5 and you can pull 2. And I like Tarkin probably more than most people do in command decks. I think he's a good way to smooth out some of your turns, even though his body sucks. So this is a way to look at the top 8 and smooth out a couple future rounds because you get to pull 2 cards. If you only pulled 1 card, I would hate it. But
Yeah.
because you can pull 2 cards, I like it.
I also like the Tarkin unit, but I like him because he comes with a body. It may be a sucky body, but body's a body at the end of the day. It's a thing that I can attach things to and attack and force people to attack into. This reminds me a lot of Prepare for Takeoff, right? Which is search the top 8 for 2 vehicle cards and put them into your hand. And I have yet to see people use that card effectively. I've tried to run vehicle decks, I've tried to run space decks with it, and it always just feels like a tax versus playing the cards I had in hand. And I'm excited for the day that works out. I think Recruit is a really strong card because it can grab almost anything in your deck, and it can help you be a curve find like solver, and it's only 1 cost. But here it's 2 cost. You're obviously going to build so that this hits, but you're grabbing at the moment, very small traded tag and an upgrade, which we already know, like, upgrades will probably get better in this new set with Mando and bounties, but right now upgrades are very fragile. So it worries me a little bit that you're grabbing, like, things that are either less frequent or less powerful. I assume there's going to be a ton of more Mandalorians. And one of my local buddies pointed out it has the Mandalorian tag, so it could grab another copy of itself. But I don't want to pay 2 resources to pay 2 resources again and find cards that are inefficient. So I don't know. Once we see the full set, I think this card might be awesome. But right now, it does not. It reminds me of Prepare for Takeoff, which I already don't play. So I don't know.
I think
Undecided.
I think this is more flexible than that because since it can grab upgrades also, like bounties are upgrades. So if you're playing a bounty deck, it helps search out them bounties too, which can trigger more fun stuff.
Yeah, our little local Discord debated about this card for a lot, and they were about split on it because somebody said, well, it searches for 2 things, so it's inherently better, which might be true, but also if 33% of the units in the game are vehicles and only 2% are Mandalorians in the long run, Prepare for Takeoff might be a stronger card long term. Who knows? This is also heroism, so it can go in a ton of different aspects, so it could be incredibly powerful, and time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see.
Slide next. Good ones.
Alrighty, so we have the Pike Sentinel, which is a 2 cost vigilance villainy ground unit, 2 power, 3 health, underworld trait with Sentinel. So it's just a 2/3 with Sentinel. I think I know what your thoughts are on this. We haven't talked about it beforehand, but what are your thoughts?
Very good. This is just making me want to run a Palpatine Vigilance deck. Great in the Vader Vigilance deck because I like to have board presence in it and not go fully all in on events. A Sentinel on the ground on turn 1 is completely a thing we needed to help answer aggro. With the prevalence of ECL, it's still a little terrifying because somebody could, on the next turn, super laser tech ECL into it and still ramp themselves, but a really strong card in itself. Really glad it doesn't have the Trooper or Imperial trait because it does not need those to be a strong card.
Yeah, I like it. It's a solid.
Killer art too. I love it.
Yeah, it's a really solid turn 1 play for those control decks. I like it a lot. Yeah. So ditto whatever you said. Then we have Follower of the Way, which is a 2 cost vigilance unit, ground unit. 1 power, 3 health, Mandalorian trait, and it says while this unit is upgraded, it gets +1/+1. So when it's upgraded, it's a 2/4. Plus
What do you
whatever.
think on this one? Let's hear you first.
I like it. I think there's got to be a way to get experience tokens on this. You put experience tokens on it, you're double dipping on that +1 and whatever other upgrades stats you can get. I think this guy can get big. I think of like the cheer decks that want to play a bunch of upgrades. I think he would fit in there. Yeah, I think he's better than Guardian of the Wills, even though he doesn't have the force trait. Like just the 1/3 that can become a 2/4 is better than a 2/2, you know? So
Searchable by that event. I think the 3 health does a lot for you. It still dies to Battlefield Marine and Probe Droid and all sorts of things. But if you play this on the play, and the next turn you drop an Electro Staff on it, you still got 1 resource open on your second round, and you're sitting with Electro Staff's a +2/+2, but it turns into a +3/+3, so you've got a 4/6 dude that takes 1 less damage when attacked. That's insane. That's not takedownable. That's definitely power that are excitable, but it's a very strong tempo shift. And I like the cost reduction from Guardian of the Wills, but I think this is a slightly better combo because if you're putting a bunch of eggs in one basket, you want that basket to be sturdier, and he does that automatically.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think we're going to see upgrades. We have Mandalorian, so I think we're going to see more of that type of thing.
I think
Maybe.
in a live stream, the devs hinted that Mandalorians would synergize with upgrades, which we've seen with the leader unit, and now this unit. So, and then the Mandalorian search event. So I am excited to see like a faction that's all in on upgrades.
Well, the Mandalorian himself, like the legendary card.
Yeah, he puts a shield on something so he could shield this, right?
And it's like based off the power or something, isn't it? It is. You may heal all damage from a unit that costs 2 or less and give 2 shield tokens to it. So you can heal this guy and give him 2 upgrade tokens.
That's pretty crazy.
So not only can he help out Grogu, but he can help out boy.
Yeah.
I think that was it for
That's all the new ones. Cool.
all the new ones. Yeah. So
It
that was
creeps
it.
towards us every day, and I'm very excited.
Oh, we missed one. I missed one
What?
somehow. I missed one. This is on my bad. So hold on. We missed one. I can't believe it.
Now I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, I think I know which one.
All right. You can
The
do the honors
doctor.
on this one.
I'm gonna let you do it.
Okay. This is Dr. Evazan. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Evazan? I don't know.
Evazan.
Yeah, that's
I
even
always-
why I passed.
I always struggle with this one. He's a 2-cost cunning villainy ground unit. He's a 3 power, 3 health underworld unit that is shielded. So when he comes into play, he gets a shield token. So he's a 3/3 with a shield. And then he has a bounty ready up to 12 resources. So when your opponent defeats him, they get to ready 12 resources, which is hilarious since he's wanted in 12 systems. So what are your thoughts on the Mad Doctor?
Theme, A+.
Mm-hmm.
Art, probably my least favorite art in the game so far. So I'm not wild about the art in this one. Too cartoony for me. But some people like it, so that's good. Our local Discord has talked about this card a lot as well, and it is another very polarizing card. Some people are like, this card is absolute trash. And some people are like, I cannot wait to put this card in my Boba Fett deck. So it's very interesting to see the different opinions coming in. I'm of the opinion that he'll be very good in the decks that he is in. Right? If you can crash with him to have him defeated before your opponent spent anything, then he's just like a great value trade unit for mid-range and anti-aggro and things like that. If you're playing against like the Vader control deck, they're just going to entrench this guy, and then on turn 8 they get a free super laser blast and can dump a unit. That seems really bad. So it's going to depend on what matchup you're in, but that's the nice thing in this game is if you have a card that's really good in one matchup, but bad in another one, you got that ability to resource the one that you don't want for your matchup, and then you can sideboard him after the first round. So I think his stat line's incredible for the first turn. I think the bounty is a risk, but it's only really a risk if your opponent waits to get rid of him when they can, not ready all 12, but ready enough to make an impact, right? If I get rid of him with takedown on my 4 resource turn, I can now take down and take another thing out, which is a big problem with takedown on turn 4 is you spend your whole turn getting rid of one thing. They might play 3 or 4 more things. So Can be really bad into control, really, 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 really good into aggro.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. The 3/3 with the shield is ridiculous to me. It's gonna take out two things most games, right? And most games you're gonna have control over how that happens. I feel like so. I don't think like the writing up to 12 resources. I think is a little bit of a rainbow unicorn land because that's there for theme. But if you get the payoff, that's like ridiculous. But me as the controlling player, I'm not gonna play this knowing like I'm gonna have a little more control over this. I'm not gonna let that happen. You know, like a good player is not gonna let that happen. You're gonna leverage that 3/3 with a shield to, you know, remove cheap aggro units and you know, sack.
There was a dude on our Discord that said, this card sucks, it just gets entrenched. And I was like, isn't that every unit? Like, does that change? Every unit's bad, it just gets entrenched, but they only have 3, so you're making them burden on Dr. E instead of, you know, Sabine, or not Sabine, I guess, Boba Fett or whoever.
Or the fire spray,
Yeah, exactly.
And so the whole, this is a side tangent, but the dies to removal arguments, they need to stop.
Oh, I know. We made so many memes out of it. It was really funny.
Gosh, like everything dies to removal. That's not what makes a card good or
not
bad.
Leader units unless they're takedownable.
Yeah.
Or super laser blastable.
Yeah. If it dies to super laser blast,
then it's bad.
It shouldn't go in a deck.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No units. It's the way I like to play my games.
Yeah. No units. All right, so that was actually the last
one. The last one. We've reached it. We've peaked.
Yeah. All the other ones. Now I'm scrolling through to make sure. Yeah, that was it. Sorry, I missed that one. All right, so that was the cards we've seen since last time we recorded. So we're starting to see some more slow drip in.
I like it.
Excited for what I've seen so far in set 2. So moving on. 3 new mechanics in set 2. We have capturing, we have bounties, and we have smuggling. So we'll save smuggle for last since that's the third one they revealed. So capturing as a form of removal and that whole mechanic. What are your thoughts on capturing?
I hope they do capturing well. Every FFG game I've played that does capturing, it always falls short until way late in the card's life cycle. In the LCG, you could capture things and put them under objectives, and you could make these awesome combo decks where you'd like capture a unit and then you'd deliver it to Jabba and then you'd burn it in the Cloud City incinerator and you'd get a bunch of money. But it was like you needed way too many pieces to make that work. And I am worried that it might be the same here. Capturing is really cool, but it's only temporary removal. And when the captured unit is returned or rescued, it goes to the player's hand, right?
It goes back
into their board.
It goes back to their board exhausted.
Yeah.
It is not considered played, so no when played effects.
No when played effects. It does heal itself, so that's cool. I think it'll be a cool mechanic, and I'm excited to see it happen. But I hope that they really nail it with the first introduction of it, because all the other times I've played Star Wars games that have had captured things in it, they've needed a ton of support to make it worth it. And by the time they got that support, so much power creep had happened in the other sort of removal tactics that it didn't become worth it. Like if I can pay 3 to capture something, or I can pay 4 to just remove it for good, I'd rather pay 4 to remove it for good. So that's the part that worries me the most. I'm excited to see how it works, though.
I think one of the cool things about capturing as a mechanic, I didn't play the LCG much, so I don't have and I played after it was dead, so I don't have as much experience with it as you. But one thing I like is that capturing is another way you can collect bounties. So you like yellow doesn't have a lot of direct removal.
Yep.
Right, it's exhausting and bouncing. So collect the bounty. So that's one thing. They might get the unit back eventually, but you've taken it out of play so that you're time walking them. It's a tempo swing, and you could collect any bounties you had on it. Overall, I like the idea of the capture mechanic. I just hope it is like all other removals and other mechanics. I hope it's balanced.
And you just brought up a good point. Since you can trigger the bounty from capture, you can trigger the bounty on a unit more than once. So if you capture Dr. E, you can strategically allow him to be rescued so that you can capture him again and continue netting resources. Or the little patroller that costs 1, you're like, cool, I capture that guy and draw a card. You can have him back later because I plan to murder him with my 5-drop that's going to live through it. And then I draw another card. That's even better. So it makes the units with bounty printed into them like super covetable to the capture effect.
It's an interesting point. Cat's going crazy over there. All right, so capturing. Next one up is the bounties themselves.
Bounties.
What do you think about bounties?
I like bounties. So we've seen one bounty that is a upgrade. Wanted. Attached unit gains bounty, ready to friendly resources. It costs 0. I think if there's a lot more upgrade bounties, it's going to mean there's going to be a lot more like removal of upgrades in main decks, which is bad for removal fans. I like the idea of having bounties on units to allow you to power creep and sort of like up their stats, right? Having that as another design mechanism is really cool. I have a question on bounty. What happens? Who triggers the bounty in like a multiplayer game if like there's player A, player B, and player C, and player A has a unit with bounty and crashes into someone else, defeating their own unit on attack? Which player gets the bounty? Do all players get the bounty? Do we know that rule yet? I don't know.
I don't know.
That'd be cool. I think bounty will be really cool in
It says
multiplayer.
your opponent collects his bounty. So
All opponents?
it doesn't say all opponents, it says your opponent.
What if I open fire my own dude? It's not the
opponent-
player that defeated him, right? It's your opponent. So maybe it ends
Right.
up being all opponents. I don't know. But
Good
I think
question.
the bounty mechanic is pretty cool. I think it's a cool balancing mechanic. What I don't understand about it is I don't understand why it wasn't just like a mandatory when defeated effect. It's cool that it's like thematic and it's called bounty, but like Wanted could have easily just said this unit gains forced response. The player that defeats this unit, or when this unit is defeated, your opponent has to ready 2 resources or whatever. So it seems interesting to me that it got its own keyword for like when defeated effects that already existed. I guess it triggers on capture as well, which you already brought up. So maybe that's the reason we get like a cool, more thematic name for it. But that was a little interesting to me.
Yeah,
What are
maybe
your
there's-
thoughts?
I like bounty as a mechanic. They were called downgrades in Destiny, and I like them there. I like that they're just upgrades here.
Streamlined.
I like the payoffs. I like the game of that. I like the lever that it gives the design team. I like the puzzle of deck building with them because now, all right, you have these payoffs in your deck, but now you're taking up card slots from other things, right? So right now we have like 20 plus units most of the time, and like I don't know, 12 events or 20 plus ground units, like 10 space units, and then like whatever, right? So now here's another card type. It's still an upgrade, but bounties are kind of their own subtype. So now you have to make more deck building decisions. And is this potential payoff of readying 2 resources worth this card slot over whatever other card I'm considering? So I like the deck building puzzle it's going to bring. I like it. I don't know. I like it.
It's thematic. It's cool.
Yeah. And then the last one, smuggling.
Smuggling.
So if you don't know what smuggle is, probably should have went over this earlier. It's a card that's you play it from your resource row. So it's a card that's in your resources. Then you pay the smuggle cost on the card instead of the normally printed cost. You exhaust that many resources and you can exhaust the card you're smuggling to pay for it. And then you replace it with the top card of your deck. So smuggling. Dan?
My favorite of the mechanics, yet the most underwhelming so far. I think it's like got the most cool design space to be able to play from your resource row. Mr. Ben's not here, so I'm going to channel my inner old versus system nerd. But the way the original versus system game worked is opposite of the second one, where like you used to play things face down, and you could flip plot twists or events, and you could flip locations face up at strategic times and like have them gain things. And there was a way to like play a character from there with certain characters and things like that. And that was always this super cool mechanic. So far, the smuggle costs we've seen, other than that ambush event, haven't made me super excited. But I guess that's good. It means that they're probably more balanced and not super bonkers broken or anything like that. But I think smuggle is a really cool mechanic because even though card advantage isn't like the number one thing in this game, right? You draw 2 cards a turn, so you don't have to worry about as much about including every card that draws you things. Anytime you can gain card advantage from the resources in your row by playing something there and preserving your hand can be really powerful and help games stretch themselves even longer. Maybe not like uncomfortably long, but like longer than the aggro games that go 4 or 5 turns. So I really like Smuggle as a mechanic. I hope we get lots of more Smuggle and ways to interact with Smuggle. My one thing that I'm worried about is we already have, I have at least one friend that's a boba player, not a boba player, a Han player, that every time he has to trash a resource, they spend forever looking at the resource row and deciding what to trash. And once a bunch of cards have Smuggle, I can see people having a hard time managing my hand and managing my pseudo hand. You can't see it, but I'm pointing at cards on the table. My pseudo hand that is these smuggled resources. So you've got your main hand and your smuggled hand, and you've got to manage all that and not mix them up. And that can really slow the game down. And at least locally, I've seen a lot of games go to time that going to time is not super fun or engaging at the store. So I don't want games to go to time because now we're managing this dual resource hand management thing. So I'm excited for Smuggle, but I'm nervous about it slowing the game down too much. What do you think?
Are you familiar with Wyatt Wingfoot from Versus System 2 PCG?
I did not play once he was out, so I know what he does, but I haven't played with him. Yeah.
So he's a card that knows he's a card in the game. And when you play him, he gets his own hand and he takes his own turn. It's kind of, you talking about the pseudo 2 hands made me think, oh, it's like playing Wyatt Wingfoot.
Yeah.
Back to smuggling. I like the idea of smuggling. And the idea that you can play stuff from your resource row. I like that a lot. I hate that it replaces itself. I wish you did not replace the card you're playing from your resource row with the top card of your deck. I like the idea of you having to make that strategic decision to nuke a resource to play the card. Like, I'm giving up the ability to use this as a resource again to play to the field, and that like resource or tempo swing, like I think the balance there is more interesting that way than replacing itself, because there's not really any downside to it at that point other than you're paying more resources.
Yeah, you'd probably have a lot lower, more interesting costs if they didn't replace themselves in the resource row. So that's really fascinating. I would like that a lot too. Maybe we'll get smuggle cards that say they don't replace themselves someday. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the smuggle keyword, right? The parentheses is just the reminder text.
But the cost could be trash another resource or something, right?
Yeah, maybe like discard a resource or defeat a resource when you smuggle this. Yeah, that could happen. But the fact that it replaces itself, it's the first thing in this game I can say that I do not like at all. I hate that it replaces itself. I like the idea of playing a card from the resource row and the ability to do that, but I wish it did not replace itself. And I think so far the costs are crazy to me. Other than
pretty
the event,
high.
that one makes sense. But if it was just like 1 or 2 more than the normal cost, that would make sense to me. But like having a unit that costs 2 that smuggles for 6, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And yeah, I know you get the experience tokens, but then why doesn't it cost 5? If it's a 2/2 for 2, then it should, if you get the experience tokens, it should smuggle in at 5.
Yeah,
so I think
you go.
I think the balance is kind of all over the place right now with the smuggle costs of the cards we've seen. It is the mechanic I'm least impressed with so far. And maybe it's just because I really hate that card replaces itself. Like, to me, that really bothers me for some reason.
Yeah, I feel like we've gotten poorly costed smuggle cards so far, is my guess. I'm hoping we get some better smuggle cards, because right now the costs are kind of outrageous. I feel like maybe they had to do that because they have such an emphasis on draft and sealed. Smuggle cards would be really strong in draft and sealed when a lot of times you're running out of resources because your decks aren't optimized. And by resources, I mean resources in your hand. So having that thing that costs 7, it doesn't bother you in draft because you had a body to play on 7 and other people just had trash. So I think that it's good in that way. I think maybe they've up-tuned the smuggle cost a little bit high. And And I like the idea of them not replacing themselves. I'm worried that if they didn't replace themselves, they might be super underplayed. And maybe that's something that they found, right? Is that if you didn't replace it, it never became worth the risk. They had to make the costs so cheap that they couldn't find that right balancing point. But I don't know. I'm excited to see how they work out. I think it has, to me, it has like the most inherent Star Wars feel to it. Like the keyword smuggle and the idea of you like sneaking these extra cards into the game that you didn't know about. And I feel like it's going to have a really, my guess is that it would be a very long lasting keyword. Like I can't imagine a set of Star Wars where there's not some kind of smuggler or underworld runner that could like smuggle a card in. So I see it like fitting into a lot of sets, which excites me.
Yeah, fair. I just can't get it. Did you have anything else on the new mechanics or any thoughts on set 2 in general so far?
I'm excited for them. I feel like there's a lot of new mechanics in set 2. So I'm curious to see how they balance that and make sure that there's enough cards to support all those new mechanics and that they intermingle with the first set really well. I'm used to games where at the beginning they sort of introduce one new mechanic each set. Lorcana did this, One Piece does this. They try to like introduce one new thing or maybe one thing per color if that's what they're going to do. But here we've got 3 new things. They seem like they're in all the colors and they're going to be immensely game state like shifting. So I hope that this is sort of FFG interjecting their card game with a bunch of abilities so that they can revisit them all later. And I hope it doesn't become like there's one guy on our Discord that's very worried that this is going to become a keyword puke game where every set you just get like 4 new keywords and you're going to have to memorize 50 of them by the end of set 5. I don't want that. So I hope that they wanted the first set to be really smooth and they said we're going to get our 3 new keywords in there and now maybe we're going to rotate through 1 or 2 keywords a set, focus on them, and that they're not going to just dump 3 new like huge game shifting mechanics every set because that would be a little overwhelming, I think, for players.
Could be. We'll see.
I'll put a bounty on it.
Yeah, put a bounty on it. Overall, I'm excited for all the new stuff Set 2 is bringing us.
Can't wait.
We saw a lot of cool art. So we saw like Forlom art and Zuckus art, which I'm excited about. Forlom's my kid. I'm his daddy. So I'm excited for that. So hopefully he's a player.
Yeah, and if you haven't been watching spoilers, if you check out the Asmodee or FFG Instagram or the Star Wars Unlimited Instagram, a lot of times they'll post a picture of the card art, and then they'll post the character name, and then the next day they'll post the ability. So we have a lot of fun on Discord, on different Discords and different Facebook chats with everybody sort of trying to guess, like, oh, what's the ability that they're going to reveal tomorrow with Crosshair or whoever. So I find that to be a really fun part of spoiler season is like the guessing and anticipation each day. So
yep,
it's
Xander's doing
super
a good
fun.
job.
Hmm?
So Xander's doing a good job. So when you see him,
keep it up. I like that.
Xander's doing a good job. Well, I didn't have anything else. I didn't even post that we were recording tonight because we didn't have Ben. So I don't.
It was a little impromptu.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. So if you don't have anything, we'll see you.
That's it for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.